Welcome everyone. How is it going? We're here for another session of Build with Ben. And if you weren't here last week, Nuxt 3 beta has been released, which is incredibly exciting. And so naturally, there's a lot to explore with Nuxt 3. So I mean, probably not a surprise to many of you, but we'll have a lot of Nuxt 3 beta content basically coming out. And so today, I thought it would be fun for us to explore basically like taking the Nuxt 3, because we've explored some basic capabilities of it. But what I want to do is take that to the next level and say, what do we want to actually start adding integrations to it? Now, first thing first, Nuxt 3 is in beta. In other words, not ready for production. I think that's the key thing to underscore here. I simply am just kind of pushing the limits on things and seeing how things might work in different test projects as they start to solidify different things. But in the meantime, yeah, let's go ahead and check it out. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Let's kick it off. Let's see, switching over to live screen. All right. So what we have here, if you haven't checked it out already, this is basically the new Nuxt.js site. And if you can see here, Nuxt 3 beta is out. We have the announcement. And so if you want to check this out, be sure to go ahead. You can read through all the different ideas and tools that are coming in. And so, yeah, this is exciting. So what we're going to do is we're just going to go ahead, kick off. We're going to start basically a new project. And then we're going to go from there and then just start adding in functionality and see how far we can get in the next, well, less than 90 minutes. So let's kick it off. First thing first, let's go ahead. Let me open VS Code. And actually, I don't need that. I just need a new workspace. Excellent. All right, let's open the terminal. And first thing we're going to do is we're going to initialize a new project. So what I would like to do is, again, I like to keep as much of my code open source as possible so that people can go ahead and check it out. So I know the last time I did a build with Ben 19 repo, but that kind of, for me, I think limits the ability for it to be a bit more diverse because maybe the same code can be reused in blog posts, that kind of stuff. So since this is very specifically a Nuxt 3 Supabase, and we're going to stick with the TodoMVC model because I think there's going to be enough new stuff we're doing today as far as like integration with a third-party database. But also, if we have time, I'd love to get authentication in there as well. So with that, I love to keep the application itself at least more familiar as far as people following along so that they're not just trying to think of random requirements that might not be relevant. So the first thing we're going to do to get started is I'm going to use npx nuxi. Excuse me. I'm going to be using npx nuxi. And so nuxi is the new Nuxt CLI that they're basically releasing. And so we're going to go ahead and initialize a new project. And then what are we going to call it? I'm going to say Nuxt 3 Supabase TodoMVC. I mean, nice and explicit. Because, in the future, we might have other types of demos we want to do with Nuxt 3 and Supabase. So just like that, everything has been clone set up. So I'm going to go ahead and change directories into here. Oh, that's the wrong thing. Nuxt 3 Supabase. Excellent. All right, we are good. So as we can see right now, we currently actually don't have a Git repo. So let's go ahead and initialize that with git init. Boom. And so if you see here in my terminal, I'm using something called Rocket Ship. I believe it's Rocket Ship ls command prompt. That's what I wanted. Command prompt. Starship. Why do I keep calling it Rocket Ship? Okay, Starship. Starship is one of my favorite cross-shell prompts, basically, because it just gives you so much context for what's going on. So you can see here that now that I've initialized a repo, I have like the folder here. Again, that's pretty normal for terminals. But then on top of it, I get a nice little icon with the branch name, which I think is super great for just kind of instantly identifying what it is. And then here is basically like they have their own icons for indicating what exactly is basically like the status of the branch. So in this particular case, question mark means there are a bunch of files that haven't been committed yet. And so basically there is a change to the last commit, which is super nice. And finally, what I get here, if you can't tell, is actually the node version that I'm running on. So it makes it really easy to see kind of what I'm working with and how the state of the environment is. So, and this was done with like very little configuration, other than I think getting the typography set up. So I got my icons with a nerd font. That was basically it. It just worked out of the box, and I love it. The minimalism with just enough context works great for me. That said, all right, so let's go ahead and commit said things. So I'm going to commit. This will be a config because it's not really a feature. I'm just going to initialize the Nuxt 3. Hey, how's it going, Spence? All right, we're initializing a Nuxt 3 beta scaffold. And so one of the reasons we're doing this, for those of you who are also playing with Nuxt 3 beta, just know that because a lot of things are being kind of changed and updated as they figure out bugs and that kind of thing, sometimes what I found is like there's no clear, call it upgrade path between one Nuxt 3 beta release and another Nuxt 3 beta release. And so sometimes it's easier if you're just testing things out just to make sure to start from scratch, because I've noticed sometimes there's a little bit of a discrepancy when I try to just like copy over configs. It's kind of weird. But anyways, Spence, let's see. Are you here in London? I sadly am not. So for those who don't know, actually, because, if you're here, odds are you like Vue things. And if not, this might be fun for you to know about anyways. Vue London conference. This week, basically, Vue London is happening. They're calling it also, I think they're calling it Vue.js Live this year. And so there's like a remote track as well as an actual in-person track, in-person remote hybrid. And sadly, I will not be there in person, but I am speaking here remotely. So let's see. There I am. But where's the schedule? Schedule's up here. Why am I looking so far? So as you can see, there's going to be a lot of different stuff happening with this event. So be sure to check it out. But then as far as the remote track goes, I think I'm around 12 o'clock. What time am I? There we go, over here on day 2. So I'll be speaking on just the topic of options versus composition API and just sort of what it takes to choose the right approach for your team. So just a little bit of shout out there. So I see like Mark, Spence, and a lot of other people actually that are in London right now and very, very jealous. So actually, I think Mike, who just joined the chat, is there in London as well. What's up, Mike? Good to see you. Yeah, so my heart is sad as I am not there in London, because I think Vue London, at least when I was there a couple of years ago, was just an absolute blast. So super nostalgic and looking forward to when I'm back to the in-person events. I think I'm going to, assuming things go okay, at least from my end, I think I'll hopefully start attending in-person events next year. So, all right. So nice little shout out there for Vue London. And then I imagine for the remote talks and that kind of stuff, it should go up line as far as the recording goes. So in case you can't attend it for whatever reason, I imagine those things should be posted. Okay, so where were we? All right, so we've just initialized our repo for Nuxt 3. And then as we can see here, let me actually, oh wait, I forgot. This project is not open in VS Code. Here we go, much better. As you can see, very, very bare bone for those who haven't had a chance to dive into it yet. As you can see here, a lot of the folder scaffolding that Nuxt used to do right out of the gate is basically gone. And so I know that this has been a little controversial with the community, because some people are like, well, I like the fact that it was already there for me and then I could get in there. But then we have to acknowledge the fact that there are trade-offs to that, right? Because a lot of times I found when I was teaching people how to use Nuxt that they didn't necessarily need all those basically all those folders. And in fact, sometimes it made things more confusing, because they're like, I just want to build something, like I just want to get into it, and then as I go through, I'll have different questions about how I want to add stuff. And I think progressive enhancement is something that I think as developers we've come to love as a term, but sometimes I think we forget that when it comes to providing boilerplate, if we overload new people with that information, while we might prefer certain like scaffolds and boilerplates, a lot of times I would say new users prefer the simplicity, because again, it keeps them from just naturally getting distracted from like, but what does this folder do? And this folder, and this folder, and this folder. So here, as we can see, just a bunch of config, a README, a TypeScript config, package.json, nuxt git ignore. And it's quite clear that our main entry point here is actually just app.vue. That's it. So if you want to just start building with Nuxt 3, that's it. You just jump into this file. And then what I love about this is that as you need new features, then that's when you go ahead and add them on. I think that is a much more progressive way and allows people to actually feel like they're adding stuff to the code base rather than just being like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna use this thing that's pre-configured. And so for those of us, however, I'm sure there's gonna be like, well, I already know I'm gonna need all this stuff in my projects going forward. If you didn't know already, GitHub already has the ability to allow you to templatize things. So for example, I think this is what I called it. This is did I mess up? I messed up. Let me try Raycast, GitHub, search repositories, Obsidian. Ben's Obsidian boilerplate. Did I spell something wrong? I spelled something wrong. Oh yeah, I forgot to put my username. Duh. Okay, but you can see here like this used as a template, for example, right? I would say that basically, if your company has a specific set of standards, that you want to use, then that's fine. And so another example of this actually is the Vue Enterprise boilerplate. And so this is another example of like an opinionated way to provide structure for your basically for your team to do things a certain way. But I think as far as the community goes, it's good to start, in my opinion, at least so far from what I've seen, it's been nice to have that basically as a starting point. And so I see Guillaume here with the troll here. That is well placed. So for those who don't know, Apple did release basically new MacBook Pros yesterday. And while there's a lot to be excited for, one of the things that people aren't as jazzed about is that the notch, which has come into the phone basically. So I guess just to be real quick, just to make sure for those who might not be using iPhones, for example, you can see here very clearly actually in this photo, and this is not an ad for AT&T. So just like this, let me just blow it up a little bit. Boom, boom, boom. Okay, you can see here that the LED screen goes basically almost edge to edge, but it has that notch to account for basically the camera. And so a lot of mixed feelings on this, right? Even when the phone did this same thing, I think there was a lot of concern regarding it. And so Raycast apparently, is it today? What? Yes, today they apropos, I think they must either echo the sentiments on this. And so the laptop, because the laptop now will have a notch in order to basically provide more real estate. And so there's certainly something to be said about the fact that, I don't know, as you can see here, I already have a ton of icons at the top. But again, for me, like the benefits of what they're coming out with the new MacBook Pros, to me, override this. For me, it's a possible inconvenience because I think there's software that will basically, I think, take care of this. Because, for example, I use Bartender. And so Bartender, as you can see, actually cleans up my icons a lot. So I don't have to worry about that kind of thing. And I can imagine Bartender will probably come out with a way to just basically like, rather than have to deal with the initial like thing at the top, like the bar, it'll just probably drop it down a row so that you won't like lose that real estate. So for me, I mean, again, we'll see. Mike here, give it a 6 months, no one will care. Yeah. And so, if you're looking for a new computer, though, I would say at least based on the benchmarks and the things they've been saying about the new M1 enhancements on Pro and Max, could be a pretty big deal for people's productivity as far as output and that kind of thing. So Guillaume said, couldn't they just not put a notch? I think at least the idea here was just to be able to add more real estate. Theoretically, like you are getting a little bit like more out of it because there's less bezel. Because right now, you know what, I can, and then again for point of imagery, so the MacBook Air M1, which is what I'm actually currently on right now. So we take a look at give me the image, yeah. So we can see here, right, there's this giant, or I say giant, there's clearly this kind of thick black line across the top. So the idea is that they would just push that up. Yeah, it's possible. I mean, Guillaume, we've clearly seen that Apple they've changed their mind on things. So who knows, maybe they'll add the notch and then they'll take it away in a couple of years. Because after all, for example, we lost the HDMI port on a lot of MacBook Pros, which a lot of people were unhappy about. That we're actually getting back with the new one. And then they went full USB-C for charging, but now they're actually adding the MagSafe back in. Although, fun fact, you can still do USB-C charging for your MacBook Pros, so that you actually have options in case, like, for whatever reason you leave like your MagSafe at home, whatever, there are options. And I'm really happy about that, because when you have proprietary chargers like the MagSafe that are kind of hard to get on the road, because as we see in the chat, there are people there in London, and I'm pretty sure some of them have either themselves or known people who have forgotten their charger somewhere. And so it's always really painful when you're like the only one with the MagSafe, but no one else has it. But USB-C, though, is becoming more and more universal for charging. So I'm glad that flexibility is being kept. So very, very excited about it. I'm here with a point. XP has succeeded in having bezel-less screens without a notch. Well, again, Guillaume, I would be more than happy to see that, honestly. So iPad will probably get a notch. You know what? I think, Guillaume, I would agree. If they've done it with the laptops, I would not be shocked if they did it with the tablets as well at this point. So, yeah. I thought the new MacBooks would have Face ID because of the huge notch, but no. Ooh, Plan. That is a great observation. I'm actually a little surprised now, especially with the M1 chips, that they didn't add facial recognition, given that a lot of Windows devices, like for example, I had a Surface Pros that already did the facial recognition. So I wonder why they didn't do that. Although if we're talking about security in Apple devices, because clearly we're on a tangent right now. One thing I would love to have Apple find a way to bring into the iPhones is fingerprint recognition back on the device. Because I have a sort of my friend Gerald's recommendation. This is a Samsung Note right here. And I love the fact that, yes, it has facial recognition, but it also has fingerprint recognition for, I understand that like Apple has come up with some ways to get around the mask and that kind of stuff, but like, it's just nice to have the fingerprint recognition, and I'd love that to come back to the iPhone somehow. So that's my little wish list for Apple. Aren't they putting Touch ID back in their iPhone? I mean, I would say, Guillaume, as far as I'm aware, no. I mean, I have the iPhone 13 Pro, and unless some of y'all know something about like me being able to do fingerprint recognition on this, please let me know as soon as possible. But as far as I'm aware, I haven't heard anything about Touch ID back on the latest iPhones at the moment. So yeah. Anyhow, fun tangent. I love nerding out about gadgets. Honestly, one of the things we'll probably talk about in Obsidian office hours this week, I need to find a way to better catalog all the devices I have, because while I do, again, for me, the Apple products and ecosystem work really well for the types of app I tend to work on. So, for example, the fact that Raycast is Mac only, I think, at the moment. A lot of what I've seen is the productivity apps, for some reason, seem to be very focused on that Mac ecosystem first, and then Windows users are kind of sometimes left behind, or they have to wait for someone to either do like a clone or something like that. So for me, I think the Apple ecosystem has been beneficial for me, but however, I'm not like a pure Apple person. I have a lot of other devices. As you can see, I showed the Android, got Chromebooks, got PCs. Just MacBooks are pretty good, Jacob, because Mac users are willing to pay. That could very well be the reason, honestly. Who knows? Oh, okay, hold on. All right, so Guillaume here. Again, I told you I don't just look at Apple devices. So let's check this out. Okay, so here is the XPS 13 that Guillaume is saying. I mean, this is very pretty. I like the black. Yeah, that is quite nice. See, okay, hold on though, Guillaume. What is the camera resolution on this though? This is in French right now, so can I figure it out from here? The photo. Okay, 720p. Again, I think for most people this probably doesn't matter, but at least as far as they've said so far, at least reported, the specs on the webcam for the new MacBook Pros are actually 1080 with, actually, why am I even guessing? Apple MacBook Pro. I can just tell you. Charge for pros, tech specs. Let's just do the 14-inch because that's the one I got. So camera. Bum. Here you go. Oh, I thought they had the refresh rate. I think it was like 120 hertz. I might be totally wrong. Yes, they are 1080p. And again, is that critical for most people? No. I mean, honestly, most people are getting away with we've lived in the world of remote for so long. So is that critical? But the reason I'm excited about it is because I cannot even tell you how many webcams I bought over the course of the pandemic in an attempt to figure out which one was like the optimal one. And so if you're wondering right now, I am not on a webcam right now. Like the video you're looking at me right now has basically been me caving to the time to use a DSLR that can basically channel video forever. And then this is like the best resolution I could get. That said, all the other webcams I bought is like, well, more importantly, I guess I could, but like it's just not realistic for me to bring a DSLR setup with me on the road. Just not gonna happen. I thought about it. The most I would be willing to do is bring like a studio mic. So for example, like the Shure MV7 that I'm actually talking to you right now on, that I'm willing to pack because I've tried it. It's actually fairly easy to bring. But camera stuff is always a little bit tricky. So the idea that we would be able to get 1080p, and again, I won't be able to, not even I won't be able to. When I get the laptop, when I do some streaming, because I'll actually, if I'm lucky, I'll have the laptop next week. So maybe like the following week, once I get everything set up, we can actually see how good it is. That would be awesome for me because when I'm on the road, I can record stuff, I can do all these sort of things, and all I need would be my mic, and then the laptop camera would take care of everything. So for me, that is a pretty big deal, which I'm very excited about. So Guillaume here, XPS focused on video calling now, 4 lens for more sharpness, low light noise reduction. Hey, I'm all for it. Again, I would say, yeah. Oh, yes. All right. So, Mike, thank you. Yes, let's get back to Nuxt because we have clearly gone on a little bit of a tangent on Apple devices, but that has been fun chatting about this. And so, Guillaume, I look forward to seeing what the rest of the PC world does. And again, hopefully they inspire Apple to do some of that stuff as well. All right. Jumping on back. Okay. We've talked about Nuxt. We're now gonna build some stuff. All right, don't need that. Then this. Okay, wunderbar. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna go ahead and actually create a repo for this because I've initialized it locally. I actually haven't created one. Now, so in case you haven't used it before, I'm a big fan of the GitHub CLI because it's just one less thing that I have to click through and navigate. So to demo this real quick for people, in the event I wanted to create a new repo, normally what you would do is you go to github.com, you'd come here, you'd click on it, you'd click new repository, you'd wait for it, you'd fill out the name, etc., etc. But then you'd have to go and then go to your local repo, and gosh, I never like those steps are just kind of convoluted for me. So for me, I just go GitHub repo create, and all I'm saying is I'm going to create a repo in this specific directory and attach all the stuff. I'm going to say it's public, and yes, I want it to be added to origin. Oh, name reserved. Did I already have a repo called this? I forgot. Raycast GitHub. Nope. GitHub Nuxt 3. No, I don't have one yet. Why? Oh, wait. GitHub repo create Nuxt 3. Sorry, this is the name. Sorry, I totally botched that. It's Nuxt 3 Supabase TodoMVC because you're creating a repo with this name. I shouldn't have used a period. That was my fault. Yes, this is great. And then you can see everything's just set up. So now if I push everything, oh, this part, I wish they would automate this. You would think that everyone just wants their upstream. Oh, that's not what I wanted at all. You would think everyone would just want their upstream to be main by default. So now if I do repo view, oh, this command I don't like. This is overly complicated. But when I open this, you can see the repo now is live. So let me go ahead and drop this in the chat for anyone who wants it. And then we're going to go ahead and let me just add it to my Obsidian resources. Because, oh, yes, what did we talk about today? We've talked about that. We've talked about Raycast. Oh, do I not have Raycasts? We talked a little bit. Oh, well, not just Raycast. We talked about, this is why I like a clipboard history. Starship. That's what we talked about. Excellent. Okay. Jumping back into things. Let's keep at it. So let's go ahead, bump this over. Let's start up the local dev server. Oh, wait, I forgot. I got to install dependencies while we're waiting. And I accidentally fired dscript. Need to turn that off. Most excellent. Okay, while that's in basically installing dependencies, let's go ahead and talk about what we're doing here because we are talking. Let's see, Jacob, look at Starship. Oh, I use Starship and I love Starship. Highly, highly recommended in case you're not already using it, Jacob. Although I wouldn't be surprised if you were. So what we're doing now is we're talking about Supabase, right? So Supabase, for those who don't know, Supabase is, well, as they say right on the tagline, they are the open source Firebase alternative. But it's not merely just saying like, oh, if you like Firebase, you can use this instead. They come with a lot, at least I've heard, they come with a lot of great built-in things and make things a lot easier. So I've always wanted to play around with it. So that's why we're here today. So we're going to go ahead and actually just meanwhile get this started up. I'm going to go ahead and create a new project here under my Ben Coden organization. And we're going to call this Nuxt 3 Supabase TodoMVC just to be consistent. The password, yes, password. Database password. This is something that I will need to be very clear about. So let's go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and actually initialize a new password here on inside of 1Password. So again, this is just your normal, like, do whatever makes the most sense for you as far as like, you know, I'm just not going to create a dummy password just in case there's some sort of security exploit that I don't know about. So I'm going to go ahead and create one here, add a couple symbols, and then excellent. Okay, so here you go. Type in a strong password. Need a stronger password. Oh, I was going to say, I was like, this is like a bajillion characters. Okay, great. That's that. I'm in the US East region. Excellent. Let's go ahead and create that. All right. So thesis here with the question, is Supabase self-hosted? And so to Guillaume's point here, I believe because Supabase is open source, you actually could self-host it. But me personally, I prefer to do, I mean, I just don't have the time to, or more importantly, how about this? Not even time. I don't have the knowledge to like do all that self-hosting stuff, and I have a lot of other things I like to do. So for me, I'm more than happy to use people's hosted service, and more importantly, if they prove to be really useful for me and my app, more than happy to pay for it. Okay, so it's currently setting it up, and we see a couple API keys, which is great. And then we have secrets here. This is awesome. Okay, this is great. Now, what we're gonna do though is while this is setting up, I believe we should, let me bump this over 1/3. We should now have everything installed. Excellent. So we have yarn dev here. There we go. Look at that. The CLI started everything up so fast. I love how fast developer tooling is getting, because don't get me wrong, it was already a huge improvement in the past to be able to be like, you know, not have to start everything up manually and then everything's just one command now. This is great. But as we start getting into ESM, Nitro, Vite, and all this stuff, it is so great. Yes, to Mike's point, paying helps to fund Supabase. Yes, honestly, to me, once there's a product that's helping to save you time, to me, I'm basically more than happy to pay people for that, because otherwise I'd have to spend the time to do it myself. And so automation tools such as, you know, for those who have followed, I've used Airtable, for example. I mean, it's basically like, if you think about hiring a personal assistant to do those things for you, like that is very expensive. Like, one, I have thought about it. Two, I've looked into it. One, not only are you paying them hourly, but then you need to make sure that the knowledge transfer is there and that things are done consistently. And for me, if I'm going to have like a research assistant or someone helping me with things, I would like them to do something that is a bit more challenging. And for things that we can automate, things that already have infrastructure there, I think that time is like the money to pay people to do that. And the services, to me, is something I always happily do. Okay, Nuxt is running here. We can see here in the localhost 3000. But as we can see, as you know, for those who weren't here last week, we have this Nuxt welcome component. And you might be wondering, well, Ben, there is no components folder. Where the heck is this coming from? And we did some deep dive in this last week. And basically what Nuxt has done is this is actually something that's kind of bundled as part of like the initial CLI scaffold. But what's very nice is that it's not actually shipped with anything. In other words, it's just there for you as like scaffold for you to use when you first start. And after that, it's basically by default stripped out. And the reason I particularly love this is because what this means is there's less of this, like, there's less boilerplate once again. So that you don't have to be like, oh, okay, now it's time to override the hello world. It's time to delete the hello world. It's there. It shows you that something's working, something's up. Otherwise, it knows that you want to code and move on. So now if we just want to be like, all right, so we want to be the Supabase, you know, to do MVC. And then actually I realized it'd be consistent. This should be Nuxt 3, save, like boom, everything works exactly as you want. And now I don't have to go in and commit something to like change the component, which is something I constantly have to do with other boilerplates. So I love this model of like starting to ship certain things as part of like the development environment, but otherwise like you're good. No more deleting boilerplate. All right, let's see how our TodoMVC is going. All right, everything is up and running. So first thing first, I figured let's actually just follow some documentation because, you know, that I think is the first place to start. And so what I want to do here is, let's see, Supabase to do MVC Vue 3. I thought it'd be fun in this particular one to, here we go, quick start Vue 3. To go ahead and take, so because I noticed they had a Vue 3 tutorial, I was like, what if we take this and try to map this over to a Nuxt 3 project? Now, there's possible we'll run into limitations because once again, Nuxt 3 is in beta, so some of the things might not work, but let's see how far we can get in the next hour. All right, let's do this. Ooh, okay. So this is not good. Okay, so I see Guillaume here saying that the volume here is kind of on the lower side. Is it because I'm stepping away? Let me see. Okay, I'm going to try talking directly in the mic now, and I think I've upped the sensitivity gain a little bit more. So Guillaume, let me know if the volume now is better. So apologies for that if I sounded a little far away. Okay, let's do this. So again, if we're, oh wow, we can log in and update profile details. And we're gonna, oh wait, this is a user management app. Row levels. I was hoping for the TodoMVC first because authentication, I would like that to come later. So Supabase TodoMVC, a Supabase docs. I think that's where I found it. Because here, getting started, Vue, Oh, they do really want to do a user management app. Okay. No. That's still not what I want. Maybe I could have sworn they had it to do MVC example. Oh, interesting. This one's doing Svelte. Supabase docs. Kind of interesting. How about guides? That's not helpful. Okay, maybe not. I could have sworn, full screen in case it's a mobile thing. Did they change something that I don't know about? Let's see what they're doing for Next. Next is, once again, also user management. Are all these user management? Looks like they've changed it. Because I could have sworn at one point they had a to-do MVC examples and resources. Here we go. Oh, I was right. Okay, here we go. Vue 3 to-do list. There we go. Most excellent. Okay, let's start with this. So this is clearly not in the guide yet, but I think we're gonna need that later in order to do it. So hey, yes, plan. You and I are in sync. Thank you so much for that. Actually, we're gonna go ahead and copy this and add this to the resources for people. Appreciate it. Nope, plan the assist was much appreciated. All right, so, okay, to-do list, quick start. Let's see, so we're gonna come in here. Actually, let me bump this up a little bit so people can see this a little bit better. And we're gonna go inside of our Supabase here, and then what are we gonna do? We're gonna take a look at, actually, you know what we're gonna do? We're gonna bump this here, and that way we have less blinking back and forth. All right, we have a new project, great, check. Run to-do list, quick start. How do we do this? Enter the SQL editor command. Okay, so here we have table editors. I think it's SQL here. Quick start. Here we go, to-do list. Excellent. Okay, so what this is doing is basically the ability to create a to-do table. And so we can see here that this is the script that they've basically written for us. And at least from what I've understood so far, while you can write SQL manually, Supabase abstracts a lot of that away for you so that it's more of that more of that UI interface and less of like you need to know SQL. At least, fingers crossed, I hope that'll get me pretty far. So let's go ahead and run this. And so running this script, it says success. And to see that this works, we'll go in the table editor here. Loading tables. Here we go. Here's our to-dos. Excellent. All right, so one thing I'm gonna do, let me just go and insert, let's see, row user ID. All right, so get the URL. Okay, follow docs. Don't get stuck in a rabbit hole. I always have to remind myself that. Okay, project settings. Time to figure out how to integrate this stuff. All right, settings here. This is not it. Is it API? Reports. Go to the project settings, the cog icon. This is the cog icon. And open the API tab. Oh, sorry. Again, I should read. Okay, great. So we have the anon key, which is the client-side key, and that was anonymous access. Great. The keys will switch the user token. Yep, read more about this below. Service role has full access to your database. Deploy the Vue client. Site URL. Forking the repo. And then settings. Change alt settings. Okay. Okay. Wish this had a little bit more to it. I mean, I understand this part. So maybe, funnily enough, I mean, now that we have the to-do MVC, that's one piece of it. But you know what, though? One of the things I did notice when I was poking around with Supabase is that you'll notice that there is actually, if I click on API here, they actually have a full-blown docs that is unique to your instance. In other words, they kind of compile the docs for you so that it contains the stuff you would use. So for example, this is actually like the Supabase URL that I would be using in my app, which is super nice because then it's less like mapping back and forth, which I really, really appreciate. So I think more and more seeing services auto-generate their docs to be tailored to their users, to me, is something I'd like to see more and more of. So this is exciting. So here's client library, Supabase key, environment, create client. Okay. So authentication here, Supabase key. Once again, don't worry about the tokens. I'll go ahead and either wipe this instance again. Ooh, yeah, Guillaume said Stripe does that too. It's very nice. Yeah, I love services that auto-generate these sort of docs. Services key, full access to your data. Be very careful when you expose. Once again, we're going to delete this instance afterwards, to be honest. So that way, don't worry about the security stuff if that happens. User management. This is how we let people sign up. So again, I like the fact that there are all these like little snippets that are very, very cool for how things are being used. So, okay, well, to be honest, I think the first thing we're going to do then is just get things set up so we can actually utilize stuff. So I think what we're going to do here is let me pull this into the same window again. Let's go 1/3. And, oh, okay, so not terribly surprised the docs are not very mobile friendly, but that's okay. All right, so I think what we got to do is we actually got to get connected to basically Supabase. So I think what we're going to do is actually we're going to go ahead and start by installing the Supabase JS client library. Yarn add this. Okay, so that's adding that in, right? So we have here app.vue package. Okay, so let's update that. So we say feature Supabase client. Whoop, not that. There you go. Okay, client's been added. This is good. And now to test that this works, we're going to handle how we're going to do this. Okay, so actually Chris here in the chat talking about how we would handle API keys in a production Nuxt app. And so actually this is timed pretty conveniently at this moment, because what we need to do right now is we need to actually prove that that we have the ability to initialize the client, and then we'll talk about some of the keys and how we could handle that. So for now, I'm going to actually just copy this script for initializing the Supabase. And then we're going to need to modify this a little bit. So this is not totally how I would do this. So a couple of things. One, here we go, Supabase, create client. And then all I want to do, to be honest, is I want to log out Supabase. That's all I want to do. So if I bump this over and then we start up yarn dev again, what we should see here on localhost, which I'm hoping is that we actually see evidence of this Supabase instance. So ouch, that hurt. What did it not like? To load ES module or use the MJS extension. What did it not like about this? Save. Okay, yup. Script setup here. And then does it not like the import at this point? Okay, so this is something that's a little bit interesting. To load an ES module, cannot import statements outside of a module. All right, so I'm going to take out the script setup real quick because I wonder if that's partly the cause. So my question is here, grab this real quick, and then we export default. I'm going to say, actually, then we'll just use the setup function in here. Do that. Okay, that's any better? No, it still doesn't like outside of... Huh. I'm a little surprised by this because to load an ES set type module impact JSON or use the MJS extension. This is so weird. When it's running node, it's not going to like it. But it would be surprising that the Supabase client is done this way, though. Why couldn't I do it this way? That's the question. Okay. In the meantime, though, at least, okay, something's wrong with the import. We'll figure that out. But at least I can answer the question so we're not totally off topic. So, Chris, regarding how you handle basically API keys in production Nuxt apps, this is actually not what I'm about to explain while I'm working it in Nuxt 3. It's not actually very different from Nuxt 2. So I would say the base approach that I typically recommend, or not even typically recommend, the base approach that most people use is simply having a .m file. And so this is just for everyone who might be newer to this. So files are basically files that contain environment variables. That's what it stands for, .env. But the thing about .m files is that typically they're ignored inside of Git repos because, again, you don't want to be committing your environment variables. So, for example, if we have things like, base URL, and so the base URL, for example, here is going to be this. So actually, I'm going to do Supabase URL, actually, Supabase URL. And so there we go. We have our URL here. And then the other thing we could also do, for example, is the key. So in the event, we have a Supabase key, for example, in this. You would say Supabase key. And in our case, let's go ahead and just do like the whatever. This is my key. And then I'm just going to wrap it in quotes to be consistent. OK, so the nice thing about this is that basically you protect your API keys. Those are generated and then they're protected from your Git repo. And the way you access this is, OK, so what I'm going to do here is, all right, this I can use script setup for. Tried it earlier. OK. So one of the things, if we take a look at how Nuxt does environment variables, typically there used to be, or not even used to be, on Nuxt 2, there was like an env property that you include in your Nuxt config. But that has since changed to this sort of runtime config property. And so what I'm going to do is is this in here? Is this the right one? I believe so. Okay, so let me make sure, let me drop this docs in here. And let me make sure I add this resource as well, because we're going to be talking about this. Okay, so configuration basically here allows you to configure two different types of basically configurations that are available at public, meaning for your client, versus private runtime config, where you're going to actually protect those API keys. They're not going to be shipped on the client side, basically. And the nice thing about this is, rather than, for example, on other JavaScript projects, what you would normally do is you would have some sort of like env interpreter to like grab the local env file, process it, expose it. Well, again, Nuxt is about providing you those sort of like the developer experience enhancements on top of that. So rather than force you to do all that, instead, inside of our Nuxt config TS, what we get to do is do things like public runtime config. And what that basically says is like, we allow expose certain things to be public rather than private. So for example, if I do Supabase URL like this, I can say that this is equivalent to process.env Supabase URL, which is found right over here, Supabase URL. And so process.env, for those who are not familiar, is on the node side. Basically, it allows to go in, it'll grab everything. And so to show you how this works right here, let's go inside here. Everything should be good. Okay, and then what we're going to do here is we're going to use a composable, in this particular case from, again, this is a Nuxt 3 thing, but there are equivalents in Nuxt 2. Basically use the runtime config, and what that will do is basically return all the configuration options that we have. So if I go ahead and log out the config here, let's see, is it actually running? Ooh, why is it not running? Let's kick it, start it up again, refresh. Yep, come on. Push, push, push. Excellent. Look, check that out. So actually, you see that on the server side as well, because again, the publics are exposed to both the server side and the client side. The node server is actually logging the stuff out in here inside of our terminal, which is great because you can see here that you have a base path, where your assets live, CDN if you want to do. But importantly here, check this out. Our Supabase URL has now been exposed. And so now if you wanted to actually call it, we could actually do like, well, so for example, I can actually just actually I won't do that. So I'll just say like this Supabase URL, and this will be from config. And so if we wanted to, we could say, all right, well here, let me just do Supabase URL and then Supabase URL, excellent, save, boom, right? It's exposed automatically to our components, which is great because then it makes for that easy use and it's configured in one place. So you already have your single source of truth. I see Chase in the chat with a Nicki Minaj reference. Well done, well done. And so, Chris, the other thing too is that, again, just for the sake of like fully covering this topic, the private runtime config then, for example, on the other hand, we have our Supabase key. And so we can see here, we can save, and then this time it's going, it's refreshing, and then there's a difference now. Check this out. On the right-hand side, inside of our terminal, right, this is where the client is shipping the config. There is no API being shipped. However, on the server side here, here we go. This is interesting now. This is where this is now exposed so that we can do things like with serverless functions, with other backend things that are protected from the client side. And so these two configs are extremely, like, I love sort of this clear separation that they've created with this design for configuration. But then as well, there are other things going forward that I would say, especially as, for example, at Netlify, one of the things I've always loved about Netlify is that it's really easy to manage environment variables at a team level. And so what do I mean by that? Well, let's see. If I go, actually, I need to probably deploy this anyways. So let's go ahead and let me do a couple of things. Let me do a config, init m variables, and then let me do, I'm going to initialize this project with Netlify init, which is this Netlify CLI tooling. And so that I'm going to create a new site, and then I'll do it under my team, Nuxt 3 Supabase to do MVC. Great. That's fine. Run build. That's fine. That's fine. Yeah. Oh, yes. Great. I read that correctly. Okay. Excellent. So if I open up the specific site. So again, this is the way that Netlify does this. And so if you have your own deployment services, I would try to see if they have a feature like this that I'm about to show you. But just know that it's more about, the important thing here is the idea behind this, because .m files is what people have been using basically since since like it's basically come into existence. Very, very common. But my problem with .m files is that those things get lost, in the sense that, like, if someone's machine gets wiped out, like I feel like a lot of onboarding docs are always like, hey, go ask the lead developer for their .m file and then copy that over. Again, it works. It's clearly worked for a while, but it's also kind of brittle, because also if someone accidentally gets the wrong thing, something gets overridden, I don't particularly love it, because again, for security purposes, it's not committed, there's no history. But then as a result, there's no history. Trade-offs, right? But with tools like Netlify, so here, if we take a look at the build and deploy environment setting here, there actually is a whole, like, basically setup for you to share environment variables between your team. And so once again, we don't have this, again, because Nuxt 3 is in beta, still working on integrations to make sure everything's stable. But what's nice about this is that when you create variables inside of your site and then basically going forward, and again, we can go like Supabase URL, and again, I'm just going to do like test.supabase.url.co, for example, right? And save this. What's great about this is if you're using the Netlify environment to deploy and do that sort of things, what you'll see here is, I'm going to go ahead and now open up this side. Let me clear this up. And then if I run the dev command, right, what that'll do is that actually sets up a whole local environment for you. But what's also really great about the local environment is that it'll set up things for like hosting and all that kind of stuff. But what you might have noticed too, which might have been totally obvious because this blinked right by us, is when the NTL dev starts, you'll see that it actually injects the variable here. And actually, it looks like we might actually have it working already, which is actually kind of cool if that's the case. Whoops. Can it serve it yet? Nope, I don't think so. It did not like that. Okay, but again, this is why beta things will break. But as you can see here, what it's actually going to do is it's going to actually bring in a Supabase URL that's from the environment, which is super great, because what this means now is when you change it in one place, everyone gets it. And more importantly, it has the place that it lives. And then going forward, if you switch machines, as long as you link up your site to your Netlify account with the right project, it'll automatically ingest your security keys. And so this is actually, in my opinion, like, this is the way I prefer to manage environment variables, because then also those environment variables can be injected into other things. So whether it's serverless functions, I think is probably the best example for that, because there's going to be things you're going to do on the front end, you're going to want keys for, and then for things you're going to do like more API calls that you want to offload to servers so that we can help like do those computations in advance. Like, to me, this makes that whole process that much easier. So yeah, that's my little take on that. Okay, so we have this stuff, but we've run into a problem. And that problem is, for whatever reason, it really doesn't like that input. So once again, let's stop this. Let's just run a regular yarn dev at the moment. And then let's figure out what the world is going on, because it shouldn't. I mean, here's the Vue 3 TypeScript one. I mean, again, if we go to source, Vuetil is used to do import Supabase from lib Supabase. Oh, that's a little different. Lib Supabase. Oh, okay. Got it. Import, create client. Sure. Okay. Export. Great. Try disabling SSR. Oh, okay. So, yeah, I'm here with the suggestion here. So I'm assuming that is going to be in here. I'm going to say SSR false, like that. I could be wrong with this config, but let's start it up again. Okay, so now SSR false. Looks like something is a little broken. Oh, right. Well, no, my end files has Supabase URL. Why is it yelling at me? As it is undefined. Oh, interesting. Okay. Supabase uses access during render, but not defined during instance. Yeah, okay, I get that. Okay, that's good. But it's telling me that I disabled SSR, but as a result, are we saying that... Oh, there's no config. That's not great, if that's the case. I mean, all right. So if that's the case, let's go ahead and save that. App Supabase. Oh, okay. Here we go. All right. Yes. So Supabase key was not provided. Yes, I understand that. Okay. So it looks like that's the problem, because right now, if we just provide a key, this won't work. Okay, Supabase client does return something. So Guillaume is right. It looks like the SSR at the moment is interfering with our ability to actually run this, which is kind of surprising to me, but that's okay. So what we're going to do is, rather than get caught up on the fact that like I can't do everything with M files, not the most secure way, our goal is to just get something up and running. And since I'm going to blow this away anyways in the end, we're just going to keep at this. So what we're going to do next is we need the key. So let's grab the key settings. Jacob here with the suggestion. I think you could turn on SSR and directly import the CGS package. Directly import the CGS package. How would we do that? Let's see. Supabase JS dist main. Hey, Guillaume, enjoy the Pixel event. Thanks for stopping by. Appreciate it. A lib? Are you referring to this maybe, Jacob? I think, oh, maybe that's what you're referring to, because the dist, I see UMD here, module. So you're saying that we might want to reference, okay, that might work. Okay, got it. So what we're going to do here is let's break everything. And so the way we're going to break everything is Nuxt config. Nuxt config here, we're going to go ahead and re-enable SSR. Modules for ESM, main is for CGS, the other one was UMD. Okay, so let's go ahead and test this out. Okay, so this doesn't work, which is fine. And then we're going to go ahead and actually dive a little deeper now. So CJS/ is it not going to autocomplete for me? Darn. Okay, let's go. Supabase JS. Then we go to dist. Dist goes to main. And then main to index.js. Main/index.js. Okay. Now let's save that. And then let's refresh here. Okay. Check that. Jacob with the clutch suggestion. Excellent. Okay. So in that case, we're not screwed. We can still get this done. All right. Excellent. Very happy. All right. So we have create client once again. Now we should have actually access to the runtime config. So use runtime config. And once again, let's double check that that works. And then I'm just going to print out the config in the inside of the app. Boom. There you go. Supabase. Excellent. Alrighty then. The only other thing though is that Supabase key is technically a private one. Now we're not going to worry about it right now. Okay. So with this, we're just going to go ahead again, just for the sake of the moving the stream forward, we're going to go ahead and copy this key. Okay. Oh, and this is also actually safe to use. So actually, this is a good public key. So let me actually be very specific. This is the public key. So I actually don't even have to worry about that. We're not going to grant the service role just yet. All right, that's good. So now if we save this and refresh, we should see, oh, why is the key getting dropped funnily like that? Hydration context, all right, whatever. All right, save that, refresh. Something is broken on the dev side. Not gonna worry too much about it. Here we go, starting over. Once again, we're in beta. We know what we're in for. There we go, starting up, 467 milliseconds, boom, boom, boom. Okay, config client, excellent. And then our proxy here, target, app, Supabase URL. Oh, but why? Oh, I know why. That's why, because it's one thing to update things in there. It's another one to update it here. So actually, we're just going to move the Supabase public key here. And this will then be the Supabase public key. And then I just need a comma here. There we go. That should fix the hydration. That should break that. That is there. That's here. Okay, I'm going to wipe that out, comment that out, comment that out. And now we should see the things populate correctly. There you go. There's our key. There's our that. So knowing that, this means that from config, we can actually destructure Supabase URL and Supabase public key. From this, we're going to bump this up to the top. And then now we can do that. And then I can just do public key here. And then we can log out Supabase. So let's save that. And then, oh yeah, config was referenced but not used. Great. Okay, great. So it looks like we got that. Supabase is returning to us. We are making progress. Excellent. Let's keep at this. So what else did it tell us to do? Let me close that. Don't need that anymore. All right, get the URL, get the key. Fine. Deploy the client. Okay. What we're going to do is we're going to... Deploying is tricky right now because one of the things the Nuxt 3 is doing is there's like an output folder with like, there's some abstraction happening at that layer. I wonder, okay, it's fine. We're going to push all this first, git commit a Supabase config. And what we're going to do is, I'm going to guess at this point that this will work, is that inside of the Netlify instance for this app, we are going to go ahead and configure these same variables that are in our local file. Because right now, the problem is the .env lives merely on my machine. So we need to get it to the point where it's actually available to the build to actually utilize. So if this works as expected, hopefully we should be good. So Supabase URL is great. This goes here, although I don't need the quotes anymore because we're now in this land. Supabase key, public key here. That goes here. Save that. Okay, everything's now configured. Let's see if we go to deploys. I'll be surprised if this... All right, that's good, but I imagine it's going to yell at us in the console. Yeah, Supabase key required. Great. Okay, so we've proven that it's broken. And now let's go ahead and run the deploy again. And then I see we have another question, so I'm going to ask. Or I'm going to answer that real quick. Let's trigger another deploy. Because now we have environment variables. But I'm a little skeptical on whether or not it's going to be auto-magically imported. So, all right. So from Crash Dudo, as far as what webcam I'm using, I'm actually cheating a little bit. This is actually a DSLR, but to be specific, it is a Sony A7C, and basically I have a lens on this. I really need to create a page that people can refer, or even a Twitch command, things I need to get to. So basically, yeah, I'm using a DSLR for this so that, because again, I found that the webcams, while they all claim a 1080p and all that stuff, the DSLR seems to do the best when it comes to lighting and that kind of bokeh effect from like the faded background. Because believe it or not, this is actually this is basically right behind me. But because I have a limited space, I had to sort of use some camera magic to make this happen. So if you're looking for like that full setup, I will definitely try to do that at some point. And okay, here we go. We have that. Site is live, build script success. So yes, I am using the cam link from Elgato to connect the camera, but the lens itself is a basically 2.8 f-stop, 16 to 35 millimeter, I believe. So 0.2 meter. So yeah, it's got like that. Basically, I almost got a f1 stop, but I think the key thing is that the f-stop needs to be very, very low in order to get that sort of depth of field. Unless you have that range and you have the space, then honestly, you can probably get away with something that is a lens that's not nearly as expensive as the one I had to buy. So, okay. Oh, snap. I think something worked. Oh, I am so happy. So what this means is we have actually successfully gotten Nuxt 3 with Supabase deployed to Netlify. Oh, okay. We can move on to the next step because now we can actually follow the tutorial as far as like, okay, so then they said we need to update the site URL. Oh, this is great. Okay. Where is my login? Did I crush it? Okay, here we go. Nuxt 3 Supabase TodoMVC. Okay, settings, general. Where do they want us to configure that? I lost it. Authentication. Okay. Makes sense. We don't want anyone just coming in and making changes. So even if you have my key, to be honest, you won't be able to do anything anyways because, well, we're going to actually tell us whoa, what was that? Additional redirect URLs. Exact URLs that auth providers are permitted to post redirection. Yeah, I'm not worried about that right now. Save. Okay, while that's updating, let's check the docs. On app, you can go to authentication settings to change your auth settings for your app if necessary. You can change the URL, determine whether there's things, or attempt to use magic links, such as GitHub or OAuth. Okay. Postgres level security. I do think we're going to need to get farther into it. I don't think we can avoid the authentication. And luckily, we still have time. So, all right. That is saved. That is good. And so my question is now, if we go to the docs for the API. So theoretically now, I have the client key, which I copied. I created it. Don't worry about the service key. User management, fine. Actually, make it easy for users to sign up. You know what? Let's just see if this works, because I'm a little skeptical it's going to be this easy, but I've heard really good things about I've heard good things about Supabase, so actually part of me wouldn't be totally surprised. So we are going to actually now move on to pages. So this is the pages directory for Nuxt, which allows us that directory level routing rather than us configuring it. So basically index.vue is going to be our home page. So I'm going to copy this over, save that, delete app.vue. And then with that, I think we should be okay once I start up the local dev server again. And then I'm just going to create a signup.vue page. That's what I'm going to do. What's going on? Something is getting in my way and it's upsetting me. Signup.vue. Okay, excellent. That needs to be deleted. This also needs to be deleted. Okay. So if this works as expected, we should be able to do sign up like this. Oh, it doesn't have anything in it. Okay, so that's what I need to do. And then H1 sign up. Here. No path found for sign up. Hey, it's definitely in there. Okay, yarn dev, try again. Signup.vue, right? We see that. It is in pages. Signup.vue. Refresh. Should see the sign up thing in a little bit. Boom, done. Excellent. Alrighty. So one of the things we're going to do now is clearly we need to now try this bit. Actually, I'm going to copy all of this because we're going to try to see if we can actually sign up. Again, I'm skeptical it will be this easy, but what is the worst that'll happen? So we have this piece here that allows us to await, and this allows us to actually create it. So allow users to set sign up. So looks like there's a response that gives you whether you successfully did it or not, user error. And we know, actually, I realized, let me just, there we go. And we now no longer need this to be that big. So I'm gonna bump this here. And we're gonna destructure this real quick using Vue 3 sign up. Okay, let me just actually comment this out real quick. So for signing up, we need two things. We need an email and a password. So easy peasy, easy peasy. Form action, I'm just gonna enter nothing right now. And then actually we're gonna do submit.prevent. So make sure the form doesn't auto submit without us doing something. And then otherwise, let's see, let's see, input type. Yes, I do want email. The V model, fine. I will say placeholder email, that's fine. And then input type password, V model password. Let's keep it nice and simple. Place, no placeholder. Okay, there we go. Email password. Again, let's really quickly label for email, and then copy that down, and then do email password, and then this will be password, and then very, very quickly we have types, but they need IDs. So that's where we will have email here, password here, and there we go. Now we have our, whoop, I can't spell. Password. All right, excellent. Boom, 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 boom. And then I guess, actually, let me just wrap this real quick in a div. Wrap this in a div so we at least have new lines between them. Save. Okay, excellent. So to make sure everything's working, let's import our ref from Vue. Actually, I'm going to use reactive in this case. So I'm going to say const login state equals reactive. This is an object that has the email and the password, and that's it. I don't want anything else. All right, so then to make sure this works correctly, we're going to go ahead and inside of here, we're going to actually print out login. And then we should see some weird stuff happening. Hang on. Oh, sorry, there is no login. There's login state. Refresh. There you go. There's login state. So now we're going to hook this up to login state.email, login state.password. And to verify this works, we're going to say Ben at bencodezen. That works. Password. Great. Everything works. Excellent. All right, everything wired up correctly. And then all we need to do now is we need a message. So one, we need to be able to click and submit. So let's add another div with button. And then this button is going to click and then some sign up. Yeah, I'll just call it sign up. And then we'll say sign up. And then inside of our function, actually, let me hide the terminal. I realize y'all don't need that. So we call it sign up. So sign up is a function. And function in here, this is where we're going to do this here. The autocomplete's driving me nuts. Okay, so that's in here. There are two things that will be assigned. We're going to grab login state.email here. And then we're going to grab login state.password. And then when it does that, it's going to do two things. It's going to give us 2 bits. So it can be either the user or the error. And so, I mean, okay, for the sake of just seeing what happens, we'll just null this one and error will be null 2. And then then we can say login state.user equals user, login state.error equals error. And then once again, for the sake of making sure our login is actually working correctly, login state here. Okay, great. This is not working, which is fine. Oh, we are awaiting something. This should be async. Const async sign up. What? An initialization value. Vue 3 I don't understand. Oh my gosh, I'm silly. It's async goes here. What was that? Messy. Okay. Transition element broken. Don't care about that. Should have suggested current complete. Yeah. I'm not worried about that piece right now. All right, let's go. So we're going to see Ben at test.com. Password is blah, blah, blah. And then we're going to sign up. Excellent. That's actually not a bad thing, because what we've said is invalid authentication credentials. Great. All right, so what if I wanted to actually log in then? All right, blowing up the docs again. Okay, we're still good on time. User login. Okay, so my question is, now that we have the to-do list, user management is clearly not something we've done a lot of. So maybe what we need to do is actually put the user management piece here together. I wish they were a little bit more explicit on this. So, let's see. How are we going to do this? I see from Crash Dudo here. Can you make a live stream of building a complete app with best practices in mind in Nuxt? Your follow-up is cool, easy, understandable. Oh, thanks. Appreciate it. Yeah, so I do think best practices for Nuxt. Well, again, my focus these days, which should be understandable, was basically Nuxt 3, because I do think they're going to be like a lot of the patterns are going to evolve, which is a good thing, because what we're seeing right now in the web space is a lot of changes as far as philosophy and how to give developers even more power so that they can just focus on solving business problems rather than having to learn a bunch of prerequisite technologies just to do something that might be very simple. So an easy example of this, for example, is with Netlify. All you do is you build your app, you configure like a couple of things to or honestly, Netlify tries to just auto detect it for you, and then it'll just deploy it to a website. You might attach a custom domain to it, and then after that, every time you push, it just releases it. Right? And then developers have one less thing to worry about. They don't have to learn about AWS. They don't have to learn about how to make sure things are configured correctly. And then you have deploy previews, etc. Like, I think as we see more of this going forward, I think developers are just going to get more and more empowered to do great things. And so Nuxt 3 is kind of where my focus will be. And I think it'll probably be, assuming the stable release comes out in Q4 of 2021. This does mean, I think, realistically speaking, until we see Nuxt 3 being used more in the wild over the next basically year in 2022, I think that's when I think it's more realistic to see a real proper like best practices, enterprise patterns for people using Nuxt. But certainly what I will say is that as I'm going through learning about different things, I will be certainly helping to submit PRs to the Nuxt 3 docs, but more importantly, I will definitely share different snippets and patterns that I'm noticing as I'm going forward. And then by doing so, over time, I think we'll accumulate it, and then you might have like a full workshop. So maybe we'll have like a Nuxt 3 best practices workshop. But until that time, I think we need a little bit more data before we can really get to that. All right, so, Samu Arts in the chat here. You have to enable signups with email. Okay, hang on. Great. That's a good thing. Okay, so once again, one of the things I'm liking so far about Supabase is that, well, it's making authentication really easy. Again, once we get all the things configured. So that's the thing I think I would love to either help them with their docs, or if I have, I can write my own blog post, for example. That's the key thing. So here we go. We have our MVC app. Oh, you know what's probably also, it's a local host right now. So because it's local host, that means it's probably going to inadvertently fail because it's not actually on the right app, which is fine. We can just deploy it to make sure things work. So disable sign up. Okay, this is one thing I was trying to get a little ahead and like check this earlier. When this says disable sign up, to me, the fact that this is off means that signups are enabled. So to me, this is a little bit one of those like double negative things, because like if I turn it on, I think that means I've now disabled signups. But then the description here is like disallow new user signups for the project. So I think there's probably some language here that we could improve. Almost like, you know what? It should almost say like enable sign up and then have it on automatically. and then people can disable it. I almost feel like that would be cleaner. Whereas like this disable sign up, turning something on to disable something is, yeah, it is counterintuitive. That is my 2 cents on that. I think I read that correctly. I'm gonna leave that alone. Email sign up is allowed according to this, as well as email confirmation. So you know what? My guess is that we need to deploy this. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm actually going to delete the log. Actually, no, I don't want to delete logins. You know what I'm going to do actually? We're going to go ahead after all this stuff. We're going to log login state. And actually, let me do that as an object. Whoop. Okay. So now we're going to go ahead and let's add this stuff. Feature sign up. And then let's push. Excellent. That's pushing. So now to prove my point, now that I pushed everything to my GitHub repo, then what I can do is I can trust that at this point, what Netlify will do is without me telling it to do anything, it will go ahead and start deploying, which is going to, as you can see here, it shows us the, oh, well, apparently I have a typo. Feature add sign up, currently building, and then it'll go ahead and do its thing. And in case you're wondering, it doesn't just have to track the main branch. You can have it track different branches. So you can have branch deploys. So you might have like a staging environment. You might have a testing environment, et cetera, et cetera. And so there are things you can do. And then every time you issue a PR, a deploy preview is built. I don't have time to go into all of that today, but just know that that's something that does happen. And so hopefully now, once we deploy this, then hopefully we can actually sign up for something. The only thing though that I would love a little more guidance on, so you know, in case anyone in the chat is a Supabase expert, is how do I test this then locally? Like, is it that I just add a localhost 3000 here? I have maybe, I guess I could try it, but it would be nice to like, because that's the other thing, right? Because when I develop, I might want to be able to log in. I might not want people to be able to sign up. I don't know. I'm not sure how I exactly expect to do this, because the tricky thing is if it just says, we just said local 3000 was authenticated. The only problem with this is, well, no, then you need the keys, right? Because I was like, anyone can clone the repo and then run it at local 3000. And if they had the keys, they could just go in and mess with things. I guess the keys are the key part. Anyways, challenges of doing open source. All right. TodoMVC model is here. Great. It's really funny. I thought I was going to do TodoMVC today, but it looks like the signup piece was the authentication was getting everything hooked up was actually kind of tricky. All right, I'm actually going to use, let's see, Ben goes on the IO. And then once again, sure, I'll just use this as just a password. And let's go ahead and yes, I can go ahead. Let me just save that to my Ben code Zen Vault. Let's just save that. Sign up. Okay, now that we've signed up, a U client is not a create. Oh man, I missed it. Okay, but something blinked, which is nice, I guess. Do we have any new users? No users. That didn't work. Confirm sign up. Maybe. Let me check my email real quick to make sure there's not like a confirmation that I got. Nope. Okay. This is interesting. Okay, you know what though? Here's the thing. I still have a couple minutes. What I do want to do though is I did say TodoMVC would be featured in this. And so what we can do is, okay, number one, there will be a part 2 next week. We're going to go ahead and continue on this. But before I wrap up, let's go and actually set that up real quick in that we should have a TodoMVC page. And so if I do this here, again, this should be TodoMVC, great. And then let's go ahead and actually add a layouts folder where we can actually get some navigation. So default.view. And then inside of this template here, we are gonna go ahead and then we're gonna say that, again, just to make sure this works, we'll say default view layout, and then we will drop the slot in here, and let's wrap this in main. So if this works as expected, what we should see from what we learned last week is, ooh, I bumped it over to the wrong monitor. All right, default view layout showing up. This is great. So what I'm going to quickly do here is just do a nav ulli, and then we're just going to do a nav item in nav links, and then the key will be just the nav item.url, and then we will go ahead and do a Nuxt link, which will basically dynamically bind to nav item.url, and then nav item.label will be what's inside of here. So to show you this works, because obviously there's nothing in here right now, we will go ahead and do the script setup here. Import, I guess I'll just make it a ref for now. Const nav links, right, is the thing we want. This will be a referenced item, which will be an array. For now, I'm just going to use the autocomplete for this, but rather than name, we're going to do label, and then rather than path, we're doing URL. So to see that this works, we should see home and about. Great. Home is what we want. Sign up, we did create that, so let's add that. And then at the very last one, we're going to do TodoMVC URL / TodoMVC, just like that. So if we toggle between these now, excellent. Everything is moving basically more or less as expected. That part's a little glitchy though. That's fine. But then, okay, anyways. Slots, that's good. Okay, so we added a nice little bit of, so I'll say nav list real quick. Let's go ahead and style this so that at least it's not as that. Display flex, and then list ul, list style type, list style none, padding 1 rem. And then we should see now nav list. Oh, or what am I talking about? This can actually, nav list is already the UL, I forgot. The LIs will then need a margin right of 1M. Great. And then we're good, I believe. Okay, great. Little bit of navigation here. Again, not sure why the client side is kind of glitching out, but that works. All right. So we will continue next week. So feature add basic navigation and layout. All right, so this settles part 1 of getting Supabase and Nuxt working. So the nice thing is it is working. We actually have successfully called inside of here. We can actually call the client. And granted, authentication seems to be a little bit trickier. So I'll try and do some research basically later this week to figure out why it's not letting us sign up directly. And then maybe it's like invite only. We got to figure out why. But at the bare minimum now, we now need to figure out, once we can get the authentication piece, then next week will be part 2 where we can actually then say, actually assign to-do items to the users. And I think that'll be the interesting part where we now hook up that reactivity, have it update, see it update in the database. Then users can sign out, log back in, see their items. I'm stoked. So with that, let me go ahead and swap on over to our intermission. Okay. Great. That was, honestly, that was a success. That was a success because, again, when you're working with things in beta and there's a lot of moving pieces, especially integrating with third-party service, you never know what's going to happen. So a huge thanks to Jacob here in the chat for the suggestion to actually import the index.js from main rather than the modules, because it seemed like that was doing it by default, which was kind of surprising. And so now that it's doing that, everything does seem to be working. We're going to hook everything up next week with authentication with TodoMVC. And then from there, honestly, I mean, people can start building their own. So hopefully maybe we can I'll write a blog post on this and that kind of stuff. So yeah, I think that's that. Well, thanks everyone once again. It's been fun and hope you all have a wonderful day. Talk to you later.